So Bitcoin did respect that 59.2 support line that we had. And we'll take a look at that along with MSTY, CONY, HOOY, and SMCY to see where they're currently setting with that move on Bitcoin. And then after that, we're going to update my spreadsheet, enter in those distributions, and find out where I currently set on my real price per share for each of those high yield ETFs that I own. Hello, my friends, this is Legend. So, as you can see on Bitcoin, we did respect that 59.2 support line right here. Now, it looks like we are somewhat trying to come up, and we had a little bit of a top today, and it did pull back slightly. Now, this is on Sunday, and come Monday, we might see this one continue that trend going up. Now, that's a little bit of a short-term trend right here, but it is indeed having a trend moving up. Now, is there some type of resistance right in this area that we could be running into? And to see what that could be, let's zoom back and see. Well, you can see right here, that was a good support line, right? That was a good support area that we were coming down and then moved off of. Same with right over here. So what if we drew a little line right here? Would it make sense to see if indeed we are getting close to a resistance line, which was a previous support line? Because that could be why it went up right here and then started coming down a little bit. We could be hitting a bit of a resistance, but let's just draw a line to see. So if we drew a line right here at the top of that right there, just to see if it happens to correlate with something in the past. So let's zoom back and you can see right there, look, it came down, tested that line and moved back up. That was a support line at that time. Same with over here, it did try to break down below it, but kept popping back up. It also tested it quite a few times before bouncing off of it. And the same right here, right? It did come down, test it, and bounced off of it. But currently where we're setting, we did break down below it, hit that support line at about that 59.2, but now we're coming up back to that previous support, which is now a resistance line, and that's sitting at around 64.7. And that's a rough number, right? That's not an exact, but roughly around that 64.7 seems to be a bit of a resistance area that we need to break through so that we can get back up into the 70s. But with this little short-term trend up, what has that done for MSTY and the rest of the bunch? Let's just take a look. And here we are on MSTY. And you can see we were coming down. We did somewhat start trading sideways for a few days. And then we had a nice little move up, and I'm hoping that we are seeing that same little support area that we were seeing on Bitcoin, and hopefully that is what we are bouncing off in right here. And I'm hoping to see this one continue to move up if Bitcoin and MSTR can continue to move up this coming week, but only time will tell. But if so, then hopefully that's what that is right here, is going to be our nice little support. Now for CONY, it looks very similar, right? We're still seeing that same area right here where we're seeing a bit of a support area and somewhat trading sideways, right? So we do need this one to hold that support area and then hopefully start moving back up. And let's take a look at HOOY to see where it's currently setting. And here we are on HOOY. Now this one's a little bit more interesting. We were moving up and down right through here, somewhat trading within this area. And then we seem to have moved up to another bar right here, right? And now we're trading within this area. So it did indeed jump up, and now it's trading within this area. Very interesting. And I hope that it can continue, right? I hope we can continue to see in this moving on up. And do note that even after we got paid that distribution, we did not move down, right? These are actual price candles. We actually ended up moving up. So even though we got paid that distribution, that price of that ETF actually went up. So that is a great sign. Love to see that, right? Love to get paid a distribution and then the price move up. But honestly, that's what we've been seeing on a few of these lately. Not guaranteed, but that's just what I've been noticing on some of these. When they get paid that distribution, we're not necessarily continually to move down. We're actually somewhat trading sideways and in times actually moving up in that price. Now on SMCY, I really wish that I would have noticed that drop from that $7 area down to $5, because that drop right here is below 10 on that RSI2, and I could have made a purchase and got those at around $5.15. And that would have been awesome. That could have helped bring down that real price per share. And then as it would move back up, it has less room to move before it actually crosses right back over my average. But that's why I only buy when it's going to lower my real price per share. But who knows, this coming week, I might get another opportunity, because we did have a little bit of a red day on Friday, but that RSI2 did not break below 10. So who knows, I might get an opportunity this week if it does pull back below that 10 so that I can purchase those shares. But if not, then so be it. I'll hold my shares and I will continue to capture those distributions. And each time I do get paid a distribution, it does lower my real price per share. So I'm continually to lowering my real price per share no matter what the price of the ETF is doing. So all that is quite exciting. But honestly, it all comes down to, is it actually working, right? Am I actually making anything off of it? Well, to know if I'm making anything off of it, we got to go to my spreadsheet and we'll take a look at that and see if indeed I am making money off of these high yield ETFs, or am I losing my shorts? But before we take a look at that, if you don't mind, please hit that like button. And if you enjoy this type of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, as it does help the channel out. So here we are on my spreadsheet. And as you can see, I am still down on CONY. I'm still down on SMCY. And if I scroll right over on HOOY, it is also down. Now, SMCY last week was up, right? Because after I got paid that distribution, it was enough to drop it down below the current price, or that current market price of SMCY. But SMCY did have a pullback, so therefore it did drop it down below my real price per share, and that's why it's showing as red. But I still will earn a distribution, which will lower my real price per share and bring down that gap between that market price and my real price per share, so that if it does turn around, it's got less room to go before it actually crosses back over. And if SMCY wants to move on back up to $6, $7, then I'll be sitting in a much nicer situation. But at the moment, I'm sitting okay, right? I'm waiting on that RSI2 to drop below. And if it does, I can buy some more shares, help to lower this down even more, so that when SMCY moves back up to the high $5 range, it is very possible that I could then be in the green. But just continue to scrolling on through these. That's the only three that I am red in. The rest of them are green. And those mean that if I did sell out of that ETF and I sold all those shares, I would actually make money. And before I enter in any of the new distributions this week, if I were to sell out of all of these ETFs, I would make $23,222. Now keep in mind, with Bitcoin down, it is tough to keep these in the positive side, right? And if you're not capturing those distributions, you may not be positive on your position. It just all depends on at what price you're actually purchasing shares at. But for me, I only want to purchase shares if it's going to lower my real price per share. But if you would like to be able to track your own high yield ETFs, make sure to come on over, join my Discord. That link is in the pinned comments in the description below, where you can then enter in your own high yield ETFs, enter in your purchases and all the distributions that you've actually earned, and find out what your personal real price per share is. And that way you'll know if you're actually in the positive on that ETF or are you in the negative. And then in the end, adding it all up, overall, are you up or down in that account? So this helps put it all together into one simple sheet to look at. And it's easy to see, especially whenever you're wondering which ones would benefit you to buy shares in versus buying shares in one that's actually going to raise that real price per share and reduce that downside protection. I want to increase the downside protection. I do not want to reduce it. I want to get to the point where I can get all of these paid off and they're just sitting there paying me money, and I would have none of my personal capital invested. That is my goal, and that's my plan for each of these high yield ETFs. So come on over, join the Discord, get your copy where you can track each one of your high yield ETFs and enter in your distributions you've earned. Now, speaking of distributions, let's get to entering in my distributions and find out what it's going to change my real price per share to, and how much will it actually change my overall high yield ETF portfolio to, because currently it's at $23,222 in the good. So we'll start right off entering in those distributions with CONY. And to get to that sheet, you hover right over the ticker here. It gives you the pop-up, you click it, and right there you go. You are now under the CONY individual sheet, and that is where you would enter your purchases. And right over here is where you enter in your distributions. Now, I've already entered in the actual per share distribution just to help speed the video along, but that is where you would enter that in. This is the X date, and this is the per share distribution. All I got to do then is just enter in the number of shares. And for CONY, I get to pick up that extra 25 shares from last week that I was not able to count because that was purchased on 6/5 and that distribution X date was on 6/4. So I could not count those 25 shares, and therefore I only counted 345 shares last week. But this week I get to tack on that extra 25 shares. So what is the total of that? Well, that's going to be the total number of shares right here at 370 shares. So now I can enter in 370 right here into my distribution quantity of shares. And that's going to change my real price per share of $28.63. And it's going to drop it down to $28.36. Now, with CONY still down, right? The current price is at 21 and my real price per share is 28.36. So it is currently still in the negative. And if I were to sell all my shares of CONY at the current price, I would take a loss of $2,723. But if I'm able to eventually buy some more shares, then I can lower that real price per share, and hopefully CONY can start moving up a little bit. And that's going to help to reduce that unrealized loss right here to eventually to where I can get my real price per share down below that current price of CONY, as that is my goal, so that my unrealized gains would then become positive. And then on my summary page, it would then be green. So moving on, the next we have PLTY. And for PLTY, this one is paid off. And what paid off means is I actually earned more in distributions than I had invested. I earned so far $2,500 in distributions, and I have spent in capital for those shares a total of $2,200. So therefore, that gives me a positive balance, and therefore I've made more in distributions than I used to buy shares of PLTY, and therefore this one means that I am now paid off. They have paid me back the amount of capital I used to purchase shares, and they have paid me more in distributions than I had invested. So I have got all of my capital back, and now I'm just earning distributions free and clear. And we earned 29 cents this week, and therefore I have a total of 37 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share of minus 746 to minus 775. And the reason it is a minus is because that is under the zero, right? Meaning that if I were to sell all my shares of PLTY at the current price of $31.26, I would make $1,443. Very nice, right? But keeping these shares, and since it is paid off, I am actually earning distributions with zero of my personal capital invested into PLTY. So why would I sell it? Well, I wouldn't. I'm just going to sit there and continue to capture that free distribution money and then redeploy it how I so choose. For NVDY, we earned 11 cents and I have a total of 71 shares, and that's going to lower my real price per share of $9.58 down to $9.46. With the NVDY current price of $12.90, that means if I were to sell all my shares at that current price, I would make $243. For ULTY, we earned 34 cents this week, and I have 56 shares. Now, my real price per share before entering in that distribution is $29.44. But since I am capturing those distributions, that distribution is going to lower that real price per share from $29.44 down to $29.09. And at the current price of ULTY, if I were to sell my shares at that current price, I would make $58. With MSTY, we earned 21 cents this week, and this one is too paid off. And as you can see, my current real price per share is minus $13.42 because I have earned more in distributions and premium. And that's money that I have received, right? I've received more money than I actually had invested into the number of shares I had. And once that is a true statement, then it will be indeed paid off, meaning that I now will earn free and clear distribution money, not including any taxes. But not having any of my personal money invested, I'm sitting really nice with MSTY along with PLTY. But my goal is to get the rest of them in this same state. But I have a total of 95 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share of minus $13.42 down to minus $13.63, going even lower below that 0 point. So therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of MSTY at the current price of $17.33, I would still make $2,941. For SMCY, we earned 10 cents, and I have a total of 350 shares. That will lower my real price per share from $5.81 down to $5.71. And therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of SMCY at the current price of $5.27, I will take a loss, but it's only a $153 loss. Now, once SMCY decides to move back up, and once it gets above that 571, then this one will go back to green. But if it doesn't, then come next week, I'll be able to lower that real price per share even lower so that that current price would have even less distance to move up before turning green. I hope some of my methods here are starting to make sense. For AMD, we earned 67 cents this week, and I have 164 shares. Now that's going to help to lower that real price per share from $18.74 down to $18.07. So if I were to sell all my shares of AMD at the current price, then I would make $5,920. That's a very sweet profit. For YMAX, we earned 7 cents, and I have 758 shares. That's going to lower my real price per share of $5.86 down to $5.78. And if I were to sell all my shares of YMAX at that current price, I would make $1,603. For HOOY, now this is another one that I am currently down on, but we did earn a distribution of 35 cents, and I have 126 shares. And that is going to help to lower that real price per share of $37.14 down to $36.79. And if I were to sell all my shares of HOOY at the current price, I would now only lose $873 versus the little over $900 loss that it was showing before capturing this latest distribution. For QDTE, we earn 15 cents, and I have 155 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of $19.63 down to $19.48. If I were to sell my shares at the current price of QDTE, I would make $1,745. So IWMY, we earned 11 cents, and I have 551 shares, and that's going to lower my real price per share of $13.65 down to $13.54. And therefore, if I had to sell all my shares of IWMY at the current price, I would make $3,346. For QQQY, we earn 13 cents, and I have 551 shares, and that's going to help to lower that real price per share of $17.79 down to $17.65. And if I were to sell all my shares of QQQY at the current price of $23.81, I would make $3,391. For WDTE, we earn 17 cents. And I have 540 shares, which of course will lower that real price per share $23.18 down to $23.01. And if I sold all my shares of WDTE at the current price, I would make $3,802. For JEPQ, that's a monthly payer, and I do not have a distribution to enter in for this week. So that current real price per share of $7.97 still stands. And if I were to sell my shares of JEPQ at the current price, I would make $2,853. And last is DIVO. This too is a monthly payer, and I do not have a distribution this week to enter in. So my real price per share of $44.19 still stands. And therefore, if I had to sell my shares of DIVO at the current price of $46.42, I would make about $37. And that wraps up all of the high yield ETFs that I do have. And to get back to that summary page, it's pretty simple. From each of the individual sheets, you simply hover over back to summary, click the little pop-up, and back to the summary page you go. And you can see now with those distributions, I now show a unrealized gain of $23,885. I am still down on CONY, SMCY, and HOOY. And the rest of them I'm still up on. But with Bitcoin down, these are still moving a little slow. We do need Bitcoin to move back up so that we can hopefully get CONY and HOOY moving back up again. So if you'd like to get a copy of this high yield stock tracker sheet so that you can track your own high yield ETFs, come on over, join the Discord. That will allow you to get a link. From there, you'll be able to click a link in the Discord that will give you a copy of this spreadsheet. Now that will be a view only copy. At that point, you'll need to make a copy of that sheet so that you can then edit that sheet to enter in your own high yield ETFs. So that way it will track your own positions and tell you whether or not your real price per share is green, red. Do you need to purchase more shares? Or if you do purchase more shares, will it help you? Or is it actually going to reduce that downside protection? I only want to help to increase that downside protection because that's how I play these high yield ETFs. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, Legend out.